Do you ever struggle with intense emotions? In this video, you will learn where these emotions come from, what is their source, what to do about them in the very beginning, and also how to control them in the long run. So stay with me. We will start our discussion with the text from Bhagavad Gita, ancient yoga textbook, in which we can see the first instruction that was given to a student, Arjuna, about how to deal with his mind. So I will read this in Sanskrit and then also in English translation. So it goes like this. Matra sparshat kaunteya situshna sukha dukkada agama paino nitya tamsitikshva sabharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, a sign of Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. And then the commentary by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of Magha, January, February. It is very cold at that time, but in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. This is especially for India. This is the hottest time in India. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious principle of the Kshatriyas, and although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge, because by knowledge and devotion only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya or illusion. So this is a very, very important text and commentary, which is very essential for every single one of us. So before I will comment on this, I would like to recite auspicious mantras to invoke auspiciousness and blessings from my spiritual teachers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchanga Gorange Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu sute devi pranamami hari priye vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda. So, in this verse, we read that first instruction. And the first instruction that a spiritual teacher gave to his student, Arjuna, was that he should just try to tolerate. I'll just give you a little background. What is this all about? Arjuna was a great warrior, one of the most brave man on this planet. And in his time, which was 5,000 years ago, and this is something that has been happening, about which we can read in the Mahabharata war. So he was a prince and the best archer in the world. But he was so overwhelmed just before the beginning of the battle that he became completely depressed and discouraged, and he didn't want to fight. So he was totally overwhelmed with emotions. His mind like took over him. And he actually was looking for some advice. So he approached a spiritually most capable personality and accepted him as a spiritual teacher. And then he got this instruction, just the first step, just try to tolerate. Just try to tolerate. Because why? Because happiness and distress are just like the seasons which are changing. They will keep coming. You cannot stop them. It is not within your control. Okay, but now I would like to go at the very beginning, because you may be wondering where these strong emotions are coming from and why. And it is actually extremely important that we understand why before we go to how. And in order to understand why we have such strong emotions, I would like to read 2 other verses from Bhagavad Gita to you. These are very important verses. Yaito vishayam pumsa sangasteshu pajayate sangasanjayate kama kama krodo vijayate. And the translation goes, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. So I would just like to stop here, because this verse gives a very, very important dynamic that is always happening in this world for every one of us, for every living entity, not even just for humans, also for animals, definitely, on all different levels. So what we read here we read actually, here is actually explained that the mind has 3 different functions. So first is thinking, while contemplating the objects of the senses. This means while we are thinking. And what is the objects of the senses? The objects of the senses, this is anything in this world that we are attracted to. It can be a beautiful girl or a handsome man, or it can be just something good to eat, some nice movie, good book, nice piece of music. Anything that attracts us and that we would like to enjoy. So these are the objects of the senses. And when something comes within our perception, And we start thinking about it. So like I can give the example of course, like beautiful lady. This is the most typical example always given, a beautiful lady. So when a man sees a beautiful lady, he starts thinking about her. He's stuck on his mind. And he doesn't want to think about her. He can't help himself. The thoughts are just there, and he keeps thinking. And this is contemplating. When this process is taking on for some time, then is the next phase. And the next phase is a person develops attachment. So attachment develops. So if we are thinking about someone or something long enough, we will become attached either to this person or to this thing or whatever it may be. My laptop, my iPhone, computer, house, car, anything. We become attached. And when the attachment is there, the feeling, strong feeling develops. So first we are thinking, then we start feeling. And the stronger the attachment is, the stronger the emotion is. This is the source and the reason for our strong emotions. But here it's not the end yet, because here we only came to the two phases of the activity of the mind. After thinking and willing, there is a next phase, and that phase is willing. And here it is explained in this verse, from such attachment, lust develops. So what does this mean actually in this verse? What does this indicate? What is actually lust? In this context, actually lust does not just mean some sexual attraction, but the word lust in this verse actually refers to any kind of enjoyment in this world, even just like reading a book or watching a film. So the desire to enjoy that particular sense, object, or person, because we may even, and many times in the material world, we consider another person just as a sense object. We just want to enjoy this person. So this is lust, and this actually corresponds with the third activity of the mind, which is willing. So the mind has three phases of activity: thinking, feeling, and willing. And when it comes to the point of willing, then we are ready to get into action. So we will just get up and we will do something about it. But then here is also described what happens afterwards. And this we can actually see. The Bhagavad Gita gives the science. This is the science of the nature of our life and this material world. Here we have, from lust, anger arises. There is a direct connection between a desire to enjoy, hankering, and then after that, anger or frustration. And why? Why is this so? This is also explained in Bhagavad Gita in another place. It is actually explained that the objects of enjoyment in this world are actually the sources of misery. So if we are trying to become happy in this world by enjoying our senses, just like material enjoyment, anything you can enjoy through this material body. If we are trying to become happy like this, then we are bound to be frustrated and angry. So this is It's a deep, deep, deep secret that people don't know in this world, but it's a law. It's a law of this nature. And it's very, very important that we learn this to save ourselves from these strong, strong negative emotions. So now I would like to tell you a story which actually illustrates this amazing, amazing development of these emotions. And this story is also from the Mahabharata, the historical narration of the ancient ages, 5,000 years ago. And it is an episode about Duryodhana. So I'll tell you just shortly. Duryodhana was a prince. He was a son of the king, Dhritarashtra, who was actually just a temporary king. And he, by all means, he was trying to get to the throne, although he was actually not really eligible for the throne. His cousin, Yudhishthir, was actually both more qualified and also older than him. So his cousin Yudhishthir would need to take the throne. But Duryodhana, he was like, you know, he was thinking about it, how wonderful it is to be the ruler, you know, the big, big ruler, to be in control, to be the king. And he was feeling, you know, become very, very attached. And then this lust developed, and he was ready to do anything to get this throne, even killing his opponents. And his opponents were Yudhishthir and his 5 brothers, who were all 4 brothers. Altogether, there were 5. Because all 4 brothers were supporting the eldest one, the Yudhishthir. And because of this, actually, came about this great Mahabharata war. But let's leave this aside. I would like to tell you just like one incredible episode is this Mahabharata. And this was in the palace. It was long before the whole development came to the point of the war. It is actually very relevant as now in the world, you know, everything is so intense and so agitated. We also have wars. It's actually very interesting to analyze these emotions and what is actually the motivations and the guiding principles that push people into such activities. So Duryodhana was visiting the palace of Yudhishthira and his brothers, because at that point the kingdom was actually separated in 2 parts, and Yudhishthir was given a portion of the kingdom where he can rule, and in another portion Duryodhana could then rule after his father would pass away. But the palace that Yudhishthira had was mystical palace, was actually not ordinary, was not from this world. It was actually built by celestial beings, by the celestial architect, and had all kinds of like mystical features. It is described that this palace was such that you could not really understand where is the solid ground and where is the water, and where is the door and where is just the mirror. So, you know, you could just like make some mistakes. And this is what happened to Duryodhana. Duryodhana was walking through this palace, first he like bumped into the mirror because he thought this is the door, you know, I'm going through the door. So he bumped into the mirror with full force and like hit himself on the head. And then he stepped into the water, into the pool of water, because it just appeared like a solid ground. And when he stepped into the water, like I'm just like, you know, just like fell into the water, like soaking wet, the ladies of the palace, together with Draupadi, the most beautiful lady on the planet, were just laughing and laughing and laughing at him. And when this happened, Duryodhana, he could not tolerate. He felt so humiliated, so ashamed, so angry, so frustrated that he just like picked himself, get out first of the pool, and then he just picked himself up and he just left as soon as possible back home for his palace. And when he came home, he was actually so depressed that he was considering suicide. Can you imagine that? And you know why that happened? Because all these intense emotions in his mind, because of his intense attachment, he wanted to become the ruler, the most powerful, the most wealthy, the most famous, the most loved. He wanted that, but actually he saw that Yudhishthir, he already had this, although he wasn't the king of the entire kingdom, but everybody loved him and he had such amazing opulence already. He could not tolerate it. And then at the end, when he was like ashamed like that, when he humiliated himself with his stupidity, it was just too much for him. So he almost committed suicide. So I'm just giving this example to illustrate this development of the emotions because of the attachment. So the key here is the attachment. So this is really a food for thought, and I would really like you to contemplate. You can really contemplate a lot about your life. What is really the strongest attachment in your life? And this is the area where you are the most vulnerable, where you will experience the strongest emotions. So, and now I owe you, I owe you the solution. So the first step to do is what we read in that first text, which was tolerance. So despite experiencing very strong emotions, sometimes to the point that we think, you know, we cannot, the emotions like taking over, you know, I can't tolerate it. If we have just a little bit of this knowledge, it can not only save our life, but it can also help us to get the ability to tolerate. If we just understand these scientific points of how these emotions develop in us. So why we should practice tolerance? Tolerance is a matter of practice. It's not that it is easy and that you can just do it, but as we heard here, like even in the winter time, it's very cold. And people who really follow some spiritual practice, especially like in India, they will go and they will take bath in a sacred river. Like maybe you have heard about Kumbh Mela. Who haven't heard about Kumbh Mela? Kumbh Mela takes place in the most cold time of the year. It's like freezing cold, and thousands upon thousands of people go and they bathe in this river, which is almost freezing. Why do they do that? Because they know the spiritual benefit, so they tolerate. And also, why do they tolerate? Because they have higher knowledge, higher understanding, and they tolerate with their intelligence. So then the other example is given of a lady who cooks lunch, even in the hottest time of the year, which is in India, May or June. It's really hot, you know, in India, like 42 to 45 degrees Celsius. This is quite hot. And usually they don't have AC. I mean, some they do nowadays, but at that time they certainly didn't have in the times past. But still they did it. So again, why? Because they were just trying to follow their duty. So they were tolerating. Yes, there was pain, but they were tolerating it for a higher purpose. So if you are able to get a higher purpose in your life, then you will also get the strength to tolerate the ups and downs, because the happiness and distress in our life comes out of our control. We have no control about it. We are not the controllers of our destiny as it is coming. We have some control, but this is just about what we do with what already is happening. And we will talk about this in some of the next classes. But what comes to us, it's not within our control. It has a lot to do with our previous activities. It's like the law, again, a law of nature, which is called the karma. You have heard about karma, probably. Karma serves you what you deserve and not what you desire. So then you have to accept it. But if you have this higher purpose, if you have this intelligence, then you have the strength to tolerate. And now I would like to speak more about, again, the intelligence. Yesterday in the class, we were speaking about the power of intelligence. When intelligence is sharp, when intelligence is very strong, and intelligence is sharpened with the spiritual sound and with the spiritual knowledge, which is the true knowledge, then the person gets the power to control his mind. And with controlling his mind, he also gets the power to control the emotions. And I can tell you from my experience, this is just my personal experience, like by nature, I'm actually quite an emotional person. And before I was practicing Bhakti Yoga, I was like losing myself in emotions, like all kinds of emotions, very intense emotions. Sometimes I was feeling elated and very happy and excited. But then at other times I was feeling very frustrated and very angry. And I was also feeling very, very sad and depressed at times. But when I started practicing these principles, I experienced something amazing. When I started to engage my intelligence into reading this spiritual literature and hearing from the spiritually realized spiritual teachers, some transformation took place in my consciousness. What happened was that I could then, even now, for example, if sometimes like some strong emotions may come, I know exactly what I need to do. Just purify my intelligence with this transcendental spiritual sound of the spiritual wisdom. So this is one part, and the other also the mantra, the pure spiritual mantra. This is the other step that purifies also intelligence and the mind and the emotions. So when I started to read these books, this literature, I had like several times, I had the experience that like when I started, like my mind was disturbed, my emotions were going up high, and you know, things were getting intense. But after reading for a while, you know, I don't know, maybe half an hour or 1 hour, I experienced a great change in my consciousness. And what the change was that the pain, the emotional pain that I was experiencing just disappeared. It disappeared. And the emotions just like calmed down to a very manageable level. And how and why this has happened? This has happened because the intelligence has the function of designating the priorities in our life. If our intelligence is just a regular intelligence of any person in this material world, even if he is like most intelligent, even if he is considered most intelligent within this world, such intelligence is material intelligence, and material intelligence conditions a person to material designations and material priorities. So this is very philosophical, I know. I'll explain it in a more simple way, very simple way. Anybody can understand it. Like, what do you consider happiness? When you are going to be happy. So if you are governed by material intelligence, then your priority will be material success. I have to have wealth. I have to have followers. I have to have material enjoyment. And this will make me happy. So when, due to circumstances, distress comes and these things are taken away from you, you are completely miserable. You will be devastated. And it is because of the intelligence. So when you purify your intelligence with the spiritual knowledge, spiritual wisdom, then these concepts are replaced with the true concepts, the real concepts of true happiness. And then you start to understand what really is the real happiness, what really will make you happy, what really is real success in life. And you get all these concepts when you are reading this literature. And with this, your priorities change immediately. And when your priorities change, also your attachments switch. And then you're not so much affected anymore, but by what it has happened to you. So I will give now, I would like to read 2 quotes. This class is getting a little long, but I'll give you 2 quotes, and I would really, really, really like to hear from you. So please write in the comments, write if maybe you couldn't understand something, I didn't explain it clearly enough, because I really want to get into it and to relate it to you in a very easy, understandable way. So we can discuss it further in the comments. And if you have any questions, please write your questions in the comments. So I will quote one more verse, and this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, which actually explains this concept of a polluted material intelligence a little further. And it says, this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 7, verse 27. Through polluted intelligence, one is subjected to the modes of nature, and thus one is conditioned by material nature, by material existence. Like a dreaming state in which one falsely suffers, material existence, which is due to ignorance, must be considered unwanted and temporary. Of course, I have to give some explanation here. Our material existence is real, but the perception that we have under this material state of our mind and consciousness and intelligence, our perception is really clouded. So it is like a dream-like experience. of the world. And it makes us suffer. We are just suffering like anything. And a little bit about from the purport also I would like to share from A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One must realize that the material condition of life is full of distresses. One can realize this with purified intelligence. When one's intelligence is purified, he can understand that unwanted, temporary, material life is just like a dream. Just as one suffers pain when his head is cut off in a dream, in ignorance one suffers not only while dreaming, but also while awake. So it's very, very deep, very powerful statement. Basically, it gives us the explanation that as long as we have these material concepts which rule our life, all these material priorities, we are bound to be attached to different things in this material world, and we are bound to experience very intense emotions and to suffer. And I would like to conclude with one saying, which is, while living in this world, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Why I'm saying this? Because when we live in this world, happiness and distress are coming. And the body, our body, which is both this gross physical body and the subtle body of the mind, will experience pain at certain times, even for persons who are very advanced spiritually. But it is an option if such a person will suffer or not. Suffering is only there when a person does not have proper knowledge. When a person does not have sufficient knowledge, then he is subject to suffering. But a person who has true knowledge, who has real knowledge, he does not suffer. He does not suffer, even when there is pain of the body. So I would like to end here. I hope that this was something very practical and valuable for you. You can like this video and subscribe, because I will be posting more of such videos. Thank you very much.